Hey folks, everything new under the sun. War News 247. This is a website you should be following. It's very interesting. A lot of interesting news coming out of it. U.S. troops are now overtly in the news media, very, very close to the border with Ukraine, and of course, covertly are very likely do have troops on the ground. British troops seem to be on the ground, according to reports in Ukraine. And Russia is basically coming out and saying, that's it. We have proof. I think Russia's been waiting for overt 100% proof that they are not only battling Ukraine, but directly against the U.S. And this gives them full permission at that point. If they can confirm this 100%, no questions about it, they can then start validly attacking U.S. targets, U.S. infrastructure, U.S. mainland, even and even Britain. And they've already said, you know what, we're gonna hit Britain, we're gonna hit London because it's a closer, easier target for them, generally speaking. This is from War News 247 announcement: Third World War from Russia. USA and Poland hit targets inside our territory. Fears of equivalent accomplished, it says. So, not only Russia's wiping Ukraine out pretty much off the map in terms of the grid, the structure, the infrastructure there. They're flattening it. They're bombing it. All sorts of drones. You go to this War News 247. There's actually videos of Russian drones just hovering above Ukrainian targets, dropping bombs on them. It's absolutely incredible to see, and to see the type of warfare that is happening. It's not like World War II or World War One. People aren't in foxholes and shooting over dirt berms like they were. Now there's literally drones just dropping bombs on people, and watching what they do, watching them scramble, and then moving position and dropping more bombs. And there's literally videos on Twitter from some of these pages. But so not only is Russia wiping out Ukraine, but Ukraine is now apparently taking it to Russia and inside Russia. And Russia knows that Ukraine doesn't. They can't do it on their own. They don't have the technology, the hardware, the money to do it on their own. All of this, all the hardware, the drones, the intelligence is all coming. The navigation, it's all coming from the United States, Britain, other countries, NATO. Russia knows it. They're just trying to prove it. Now, Russia, of course, had Nord Stream blown up. Does anybody figure that Russia did that to themselves anymore? Russia had the Crimean Bridge blown up. Does anybody think Russia did that to themselves, to look better in the eyes of the public, the people of the world or something? No, this was sabotage. I think everybody pretty much knows it, and the mainstream media didn't go anywhere with any of this news, you'll notice. And nobody cares who blew up Nord Stream. Of course, Finland, they did, was it Finland or whatever? They investigated it. Of course, they're not saying who or what did it. If it was Russia, they would come out and say Russia did it, because that would be to their advantage, because everybody thinks they did it, or NATO did it, rather. And, of course, it's being kept secret. So it's absolutely incredible what we're seeing here. For the first time since the start of the war in Ukraine, Russia has directly accused U.S. and Poland of attacks against Russian targets, not just supporting hold back Russia in Ukraine, but actually going after Russian targets. Russia knows it. They just need to prove it and have the proof there, and that will give them the ability, the evidence to then, target really anything in Britain, in the U.S., or across NATO, for that matter. It will give them the ability to target basically everything if they can prove this once and for all. It says, and so Russian targets deep inside the country. This is not just escalation, but the cause of Third World War, it says. Moscow now has the right to self-defense and is legitimized. And this is what Russia's been waiting for. They've been waiting for the ability to say, yes, we're being attacked. It's obvious. No one questions it anymore. And so we are allowed to go after your targets. And Russia has been very patient. It's incredible how patient Russia's been. And one of their commanders already days ago said, the next feasible step, we don't have conventional weapons to beat NATO. The next step is nuclear. So, folks, we're getting there very quick. You have no idea what life will be like when World War III starts. It's going to be worse than the Great Depression. None of us have the supplies, the ability, the knowledge, the know-how, the land, etc., to feed ourselves. We're all going to be dependent on the government. And what's going to happen when we're absolutely dependent on the government and we're heading towards absolute civil unrest and anarchy? Well, there's going to be a world leader step onto the scene, isn't there? And he's going to say, you know what, everybody follow me in the world, and we'll all come together. We'll all share food, and we'll get through this together, and we'll bring peace. And everybody will want peace at that time because it will be so terrible. And I think none of us really understand what that actually means. It's not going to be a walk in the park. It's not going to be like Hurricane Fiona, where we were without power for days. There's going to be violence. There's going to be people roaming around looking for anything, stealing. There's going to be all sorts of hunger and just madness, and people going mad, and arson, and just any kind of chaos you can think of. And worse is probably what's going to hit when when this World War III takes off, basically. Data. So how is Russia doing it? Well, data from intercepted Ukrainian drones confirm the involvement of U.S. and Poland in preparing attacks on Russia. Now, what this tells me is that if there's technology involved, what's Russia going to do to quickly get U.S. and Poland and Britain out of this? Well, they're going to make use of electromagnetic pulses. They're going to get rid of the computer systems, the guidance, the GPS systems, because what is the United States military made of? What do they rely on, depend on? All the technology. If you get rid of the technology, or even just jam the technology, the radio signals, etc., then they don't have much of an army anymore. Everything in the U.S. military is very technological. It's not old school like a lot of Russian hardware is. If an EMP goes off, there's probably going to be a lot of diesel Russian tanks that are still rolling. If an EMP goes off, has the U.S. Military equipment been hardened enough against EMP? And what else does Russia have up its sleeve, knowing that we will get to that stage? And so the whole world's going to go dark when this actually rolls out. And when the world goes dark, look out. When the internet doesn't work, when people can't get information, when they can't get their lattes on their phone and do their banking, it's going to be crazy, folks. Competent services of the Russian Federation analyzed electronic components of the intercepted unmanned aerial vehicles used by Ukraine for attacks on objects of Russian infrastructure, in particular Sevastopol, Crimea, Kursk, Belgorod, and Voronezh regions, the agency said. All right, quickly. Official statement. This is what's happening in Moscow, and you'll be interested to know the timeline when these bomb shelters will be ready. Shelters in Moscow apartment buildings, shopping centers are being equipped. Shock decision of the Russian leadership. So they're getting ready for a nuclear war. Their commanders have come out and said the next step is nuclear war. They now have proof that they're fighting against the U.S., fighting against Poland, fighting against NATO. And their next step is to bring out the nuclear weapons. And there's articles already saying where they're getting their nuclear weapons ready. So this is very close. And again, you'll be interested to note the date on which they're getting this ready by. Authorities are equipping shelters in apartment buildings and shopping centers, it says, in the Moscow region. The head of Emergencies Ministry Regional Administration said. Poletkin responded by saying shelters in apartment buildings in relation to the events taking place now in Ukraine provide protection to the population from missiles, bombs, artillery strikes. These works are carried out in all apartment buildings by public services sector and should be completed by when? Look at that. December 25th. That's an interesting date to have all this completed by, isn't it? Wouldn't that be an interesting date to let loose nuclear weapons, maybe an EMP, which makes the world go dark, or at least NATO, Britain, Europe go dark? Wouldn't that be a good date when everybody's celebrating and no one has any interest in war, and everybody's not on guard? December 25th, and they're going to be completed before that. He said shelters in apartment buildings and shopping centers were protecting up to 15 million residents, and added that authorities had decided not to put up signs with the exact addresses of the shelters so as to not upset the public. Have you heard that before? Where the government is withholding something from you because they don't want to upset you, and they're doing all this quietly, and they know this is coming. If they start telling people now, well, people will start going crazy. And remember, in North America, in Europe, they're not going to tell you when the nuclear bombs are falling because there would be anarchy in the streets, just madness, Mad Max in the streets. They'll probably tell you after the thing happens what to do, but before that, they're not going to warn you. They're not going to warm anybody up or educate anybody about any of this because they don't want to have people panic. Basically, they don't trust or believe that people will know what to do or be able to handle the information because we're fat, dumb, and happy. We need our cell phones. We need our lattes in the morning. We need our video games. We need our internet. And if something happens, it will be out of control. The government, so the world won't be able to control it. And so they have no interest in panicking the public or telling the public anything. So you need to pay attention. This is ZeroHedge.com. U.S. sends infantry unit to base miles away from where? Russian border in Estonia. So they're poking the bear in the eye even more after Nord Stream, after taking out Nord Stream, after taking out the Crimean Bridge, after all these attacks directly on the Russian mainland. It's incredible that Russia hasn't hit back yet with nuclear weapons or EMP, etc. Last week, the U.S. Embassy in Lithuania announced the Pentagon plans to step up troop deployments in Baltic states, what was previously categorized as episodic troop deployments, and turning towards a persistent rotational presence. So, of course, Russia will not like this. Troops right on its border. It's going to have no other choice but to escalate this to the nuclear level. And they're not being stupid, by the way. Russia knows, and they've wargamed this. When this happens, when the nuclear weapons go off, they're going to all go off. They're not going to do one little weapon somewhere and hope the U.S. backs off. Because when we open up nuclear war, that's it. All the nuclear weapons are coming out. And so Russia, that's why they're holding off. They're waiting. They're biding their time. Is December 25th mean anything? That would be a good time for Russia to do that, wouldn't it? It'd be a surprise attack, that's for sure. So interesting time that they're getting their bunkers ready. So this is fascinating. Continuous persistent U.S. military presence in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And again, this is just going to egg on the Russians. NATO, United States, they have no interest in peace. They're making money hand over foot with ammunition, weapons, sales of liquid natural gas to Europe, etc. All the people want war because they make a lot of money from war, as long as it doesn't hit them where their homes are. As long as it doesn't hit the executives where their homes are in the United States, wherever it may be. I think once it starts hitting home for them, maybe they'll back off, but not before they made their millions. And so, yes, everybody in this, at those high levels, are interested in keeping this going. They don't want it to escalate to World War III necessarily, but they're certainly happy to make a lot of money and basically stretch this out as far as possible, and they don't care what the lives lost. They're just testing their weapons against Russian weaponry, and it's gamesmanship. It's a chess game. You know, whose weapons will outlast the other? Who has the better technology? Who is holding back the better technology to bring it out at a time when they need it? It looks like Russia's kind of going through all their old hardware, old tanks, old weapons, old ammunition, and now that they burn through that, they can start bringing out the more sophisticated stuff. Is that the U.S. is doing as well, giving a lot of its old munitions to Ukraine so that they can make new ones and test out some of the new stuff on the field and see how the Russians defend against it. Now, the only other thing is that the U.S. wants Israel, and Zelensky, actually, of Ukraine, wants Israel to get into it and give them some of their air defense systems. Israel has some of the best air defense systems in the world because they're dealing with Iranian drones and missiles and all the time, every day, effectively. So they have some of the best technology, and of course Russia doesn't want them to get into it because Russia knows they have good technology, because Russia and Israel have been talking on the back channels for many years about Syria. Syria has been the proxy battleground for Israel and Iran, and so Ukraine is the proxy battleground for NATO or U.S. and Russia. So it's just a bigger brother, if you will, of the Middle East conflict. So, folks, I will leave there. Incredible information. What does December 25th mean? Does it mean anything? I don't know. But you know, they have some timelines. You know, they want a surprise attack. They're going to do it when we least expect it, if they're going to do it. And so interesting that they're going to be ready by December 25th. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll leave it there. We'll see you in the next video.